When it comes to the best lines in cinema history, there's a seemingly endless amount for that list. From
roads, where we're going, we don't need roads.
To even,
you're gonna need a bigger boat.
And so many more, my God. But in this one, I wanna go ahead and highlight some of the ones that stick out to me, at least at the time of writing this video. A line that can just make me resonate with an emotion, or even just highlight a character with a few simple words. Maybe make a genuine difference to an entire story, or, just make for one hell of a moment. Here are just some of the best lines in cinema history, dialogue that f***ing crushes it. Starting off, we have a banger quote from the Grand Budapest Hotel. See, we have Mr. Gustav, who is the head of the once prestigious Grand Budapest Hotel, who is on a train with his new lobby boy, Zero. The train is being stopped by unspecified soldiers of an unspecified war. After getting roughed up a bit by the soldiers, a higher commanding officer then recognizes and comes to understand who Mr. Gustav is, and go ahead and just lets him go. Lets him carry on by and continue through like nothing happened. See, the thing is, throughout the whole movie, Mr. Gustav is just someone who kind of appreciates the higher class of society, just not necessarily the people, but in general what high class means. He's very full of gracious and high-minded level thinking, and at least he likes to believe so. He'll often spend most of the movie quoting literature or coming to terms with something that's going on around him, and then using that as like an example of like the high class, or I guess the high-minded way of society that is just lost on the world today of savages and brutalists. He appreciates the nicer things that society has to offer and won't really settle for anything less, holding himself and the hotel to the highest of standard. So then after getting roughed up by these soldiers, he then tries to use this opportunity to just spin it into this tale for young Zero here to take in this new high-minded meditation. But then he just kind of hits a wall in his words and decides, that fucking sucked, huh?
You see, there are still faint glimmers of civilization left in this barbaric slaughterhouse that was once known as humanity. Indeed, that's what we provide in our own modest, humble, insignificant... fuck it.
I love this moment because it's a small peek behind the curtain into Mr. Gustav as a character. It also kind of acts as a good way to show just how misplaced Mr. Gustav actually is with the surrounding world aside from himself and the Grand Budapest. They actually do play off this quote pretty well later in the movie, but I actually think it's something that follows that scene that really complements this moment even better.
To be frank, I think his world had vanished long before he ever entered it. But I will say, he certainly sustained the illusion with a marvelous grace.
Next up, a quote they needed for the trailers in the movie Fury.
Why are you showing me this? Ideals are peaceful. History is violent.
Now, regardless of the argument of if this is a quote that was made specifically for the trailers or not, that joke's aside, right? This quote still stands out, and it is a very well-written piece of dialogue. Now, there's just a lot of weight into a quote like this, especially within a movie like Fury, but also in general, a quote like this just speaking onto just the varying and widely different reasons that armies in history have all fought and died for, again, being radically different. But when I heard this line, I just knew how much it was actually trying to say. You gotta keep in mind, Fury is a movie about 5 soldiers who were just forced into this giant metal box and sent off. They are all a direct product of their environment, being war. This movie shows us the different sides of war, the optimistic and the very much the ugly, even down to the idea of what surviving actually means to each individual. We have Logan Lerman's character, Norman, who is fighting the very idea of ruthless aggression, and with Brad Pitt's character, War Daddy, who is fighting the very idea that this war will break him. In contrast to a character like, John Berthol's Grady, who is very much the exact product of all of this tension and shared tragic experiences. He is basically become nothing but ruthless and aggression as an individual. But the fact is, they all experience this amount of tension and this amount of tragedy and this amount of effort and this amount of fight and this amount of survival together. Regardless of all of their individual beliefs and regardless of all of their individual ways of trying to make this through, they are sharing every single bit of this. So with Norman basically being the audience's character, we learn everything through him and we learn everything with him, and we kind of go along with him for the entirety of this experience, even down to the end. This kind of line really does show how and why this war does start to shift him into a very different person. Sorry, I got a lot to say about Fury. I just really love this movie. I do actually have a separate movie discussion video about it that you can check out after this. But yeah, that line just kind of sums up most of what the discussion from this movie and what it has to offer to a discussion, all in one line. Now, when talking about lines that can kind of sum up the entirety of the theme or message of a movie, I gotta take it to my earliest example of this, earliest I can remember watching, The Lion King.
I know what I have to do, but going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
This one hits hard for me, as I'm sure most of you watching can resonate with it at one point or another. When looking at the story of Simba, he is carrying the weight of a Shakespearean tragedy. And when embracing the life of Hakuna Matata, this idea of just not having to worry about any of your problems or past, just live this carefree lifestyle, he is met with this conversation, and I don't know, it shows that healing isn't just looking at your past problems and mistakes as a way of going backwards. It's taking your past problems and mistakes, taking lessons from those problems and mistakes, and realizing how much more forward it can actually push you. This one, though surface level as it might be, it is one that just plays over and over in my head even today as an adult. And it's just one of those things where if it can do that so many decades later after watching it and continue to just resonate this thought of growth and healing, yeah, that shows just how powerful this piece of dialogue actually is. Absolutely deserves to get recognized in this video. Now, like Fury, I'm gonna go ahead and serve up a quote from one of my favorite movies of all time, but unlike Fury, I don't really have a movie discussion video of it yet. A neo-Western movie of two brothers played impressively by Chris Pine and Ben Foster. We have Ben Foster's character Tanner, who is recently released from prison and is on a bank heist spree, just one after another, specifically for a specific goal that I'm not going to spoil here. But Tanner is more of a wild card. Unlike his brother Toby, he's not nearly as focused, and if anything, he has more aggression to him. He clearly has been hurt, and he seemingly has no problem with hurting others. He just always seems to kind of want to push things even further than they already are. In a scene at a card table, he offends a man of Comanche descent, and things get pretty tense pretty quick. But in the exchange, we get this chilling revelation about how Tanner sees himself and the life he has lived thus far.
You know what Comanche means? It means enemies forever.
Enemies with who?
Everyone.
You know what that makes me?
An enemy.
No. It makes me a Comanche.
I really do get chills from this one just because of the delivery is fantastic, but also it really does just add so much to this character every time I rewatch this movie. Really, it kind of even highlights what's going on with multiple characters throughout this movie. It's perspective, it's experience, it's thought-provoking, it's just a hell of a piece of dialogue that just really adds so much to the movie. But before we continue, I wanted to go ahead and thank a potential sponsor of this video, movie theaters. Whether you're looking for the shared experience of an opening weekend crowd, or a time-honored tradition of awkwardly bumping hands into the popcorn bucket of the person next to you, hopefully it's someone you know. Movie theaters offer so much to both filmmaking and the power of viewing and absorbing what the art and craft of filmmaking has to offer to an audience. So go on out and see a movie in theaters. When you go to the checkout line for popcorn and a drink, use the verbal code Eddie sent me, and the guy will probably tell you, okay. Next up, we'll turn to Gladiator, in which we finally get Maximus and Commodus together again. After a long journey of coming back from tragedy, I really don't want to spoil the movie here to any of the three of you that haven't seen Gladiator yet, but this moment is entirely made because of the performance that Russell Crowe gives delivering the speech and the performance that Joaquin Phoenix gives receiving the speech.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true Emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
It's incredibly satisfying to watch a revenge film as an audience member, because then when you finally do get that payoff, it's so well earned and so rewarded if done right. It's just so nice to finally see the character get the job done in a situation where it didn't really matter what was going to follow, what was going to happen next. It was just a matter of getting vengeance right then and there. Yeah, this speech was just power and control over the entire situation, and it led to a pretty badass moment as it is. Now listen, I had like an overload of these, alright? Like just way too many to really narrow down and just figure out where to even start with writing one of these. But yeah, narrowing it down. I did my best to keep my thoughts concise and cut it off somewhere before this whole project got way bigger than I intended. I even somehow managed to avoid doing anything from Tarantino and Sorkin, who are just full of gold when it comes to quotes, so that's fun. But that being said, leave a comment down below. What are some that stood out to you? Some that I referenced in this video, and of course, the endless well of movie quotes from all of cinema history. I would really like to dive in and kind of just see, and I don't know, I love these kind of videos where I can just kind of get that kind of conversation back and forth with y'all, so please feel free. Go ahead and like this video, share it around if you can. The YouTube things, they really do matter, so I see in my analytics that a lot of you guys who watch my videos aren't subscribed. If you can go ahead and subscribe for me, that would go a long way. Be along for the ride for the next one. And until then, bye.